in terms of how I started understanding this, and it was actually some years after I stopped the research. I wrapped up the studies in '95 and really just had to take a break for a couple of years just to kind of let the work, you know, kind of settle into me, to integrate it, to think about it without having to do more studies and give more people more DMT. Um, yeah, and I'm also just in terms of gathering information, which obviously is preliminary to coming up with any, coherent sorts of well, yeah, the first step in generating a coherent sort of hypothesis for unusual findings is to gather as much information as you can. So what I was doing early on when I was hearing these reports were interpreting them, calling them psychological or brain chemistry aberrations or whatever. That there was a part of the brain that was being dinged that was responsible for the alien appearance phenomenon, or it was a Jungian archetypal thing that was happening to people, or it was a Freudian wish fulfillment or projection of unconscious impulses, those kinds of things. Um, yeah, but or it was a dream, even to take it that far. But, every time I tried to interpret what was happening to these people as anything other than it was happening to them, they would just kind of bristle and close down a bit. Um, so after a certain point, I just decided, well, I'll just take these reports at face value. If they're meeting aliens, they're meeting aliens, and I'll just ask them more about it. Um, so in a couple of ways, that was a useful mental experiment. Number one, it made people more comfortable opening up to me about some of these things, and it freed me up from having to explain it. I was just kind of, able to gather more information than having to interpret it at that point, because there was just no way I could interpret it. It was only later that I started to fish around for some ways of understanding what people were talking about in some sort of manner that I could, sort of explain as a mechanism of action, some way of explaining how it worked, rather than the more typical ways a psychiatrist might interpret such reports as products of the mind or products of the brain.